Hey guys, welcome to today's presentation. I'm Senior Airman Leah Yonker, and today we're going to be discussing security forces traffic stops. Has anyone ever been in their vehicle, driving around, you're listening to music, not really paying attention to your mirrors and stuff how you're supposed to be, and then out of nowhere, you look up in your rearview mirror and you see red and blue lights? First thing that comes to my mind, what did I do? What just happened? Why am I being pulled over? And I'm sure that goes through many people's minds who get pulled over on the daily. Today, we're going to be talking about traffic stops on base. Traffic stops are no different on base than they are in the civilian world on the outside of the gates. There's really no difference. Officers still follow the same procedures from the initiation of the traffic stop to the termination of the traffic stop. There's really no difference. Security forces just has their own standards for following, the same way that any police department would have their own way and their own standards for following. Before we get started today, we're going to talk about the classroom rules. So classroom rules for today. First one, don't fall asleep in class. If you feel tired, you're not going to hurt my feelings by getting up and standing at the back of the classroom. That's what I prefer you to do. You would hurt my feelings, however, if you're sitting there and you're falling asleep in the middle of me teaching. I think that's not okay. So if you're feeling tired, just get up, stand at the back of the classroom, no big deal. Second one, no phones. Don't be sitting on your phone unless you're gonna be researching information or writing stuff down in your notes. Even then, just wait until the end, try to remember, and if you have a question, like our third one says, ask a question. My number one philosophy in life, in the Air Force, in security forces especially, if you have a question, ask a question. I don't care if you think it is a dumb question. I don't care if I just said something and you need clarification, or you ask me the same question in a reverse style. I do not care. Ask me a question and I will answer your question. The number one thing that I don't want for anyone to do is not ask a question that could be detrimental to yourself, to a security forces patrolman, to an officer, to the community, to anyone. If you have a question, ask a question. Our overview for today. We're going to describe how to perform traffic stops while on a military installation. As I said earlier, traffic stops are performed kind of the same way from civilian law enforcement officers to our defenders on base. You call in the information, hey, I am pulling someone over at this place for this reason, yada, yada, yada. You issue a citation, you go on about your day, they go on about their way. It's kind of the same process for both civilian and military law enforcement. However, we're just going to talk about how to do it on military installations. Some of our objectives for today. We're going to talk about the purpose. What are traffic stops? Why do we do traffic stops? We're going to talk about officer safety considerations. Some things to keep in mind. Safety is key, and we're going to talk about that in just a couple minutes. Some things to keep in mind while performing traffic stops to make sure that safety is being the number one priority. We're going to talk about initiation of traffic stops, how traffic stops get initiated, how they start up, what information is needed to start up a traffic stop. And we're going to talk about the different types of traffic stops. We're going to talk about the 2 different types of traffic stops that there are. Then we're going to talk about the enforcement actions, so how the traffic stops end, basically. Before we get started with the lesson, my question to you is, why do defenders pull people over on base? Why do people get pulled over in the first place? What are reasons that people get pulled over? Can anyone tell me 3 reasons that people get pulled over? All right, I'll go over some reasons with you because we're feeling a little bit shy. Some reasons for being pulled over. Speeding seems to be the number one reason that people get pulled over. Some people don't think that speeding is that big of an issue. They just pedal to the metal, they're focused, they're in the zone, and they speed a little bit. Normally, some officers in the civilian world, even military, some officers, they have a kind of leniency, they have kind of a leniency speed. So they go 2 over the speed limit, they'll let that slide. But if they're going 3 over or 5 over, that's not okay. So speeding. Improper turning. You are making a right turn at a stop sign, and rather than turning into your lane that's closest to you, you turn into the lane that's further away. Improper turning. That's not okay. You're not supposed to do that. Failure to signal. You are driving and you need to get over into the next lane because you have to make this right that your GPS just now told you at the last minute that you need to get over and make it right. You just decide to scoot on over, cut the car off in front of you, and then make your right turn. But you didn't signal at all. Failure to signal can get you pulled over. Disobeying a stop sign. You roll up to a stop sign, there's no cars in sight, no kids in sight, no people in sight, so you just approach it, slow down, you go again. That's not okay. That's called a California stop, a roll through. It's not okay. Rolling through a stop sign can't happen. That can get you pulled over. Improper passing. Improper passing, basically, you're not passing people properly on the road. You're cutting people off, swerving in and out of traffic, not signaling properly. A parking violation can also get you pulled over. You can be pulled over while you're parked. An officer or defender could easily pull up behind you, run their lights, come up to you and talk to you, and you're pulled over even though you're parked. So some improper parking. You are parked in 2 spaces. You're parked over the line in 2 spaces. You're parked in a handicap spot and you don't have a handicap placard. You are halfway in a parking spot and halfway out of the parking spot. So I don't know if you just decided you didn't want to be in it or didn't get close enough, whatever the case may be. If you improperly park, you can get pulled over for that in your parking spot. Driving recklessly. This is one that we see a lot of the times, especially more for the civilian side, but reckless driving. People are in a rush. People are in a hurry. They need to get home. They have places to be, things to see, people to talk to. They don't care who's on the road, what's going on. They just want to get where they have to go, and that's that. They swerve in and out of traffic, they speed up, they slam on their brakes, they just do whatever they want to because that's how they want to drive in that minute. That can get you pulled over. Running a red light. Everyone knows what running a red light is. Here in Colorado, people love running red lights. It's the #1 thing out here besides speeding and not signaling. Running red lights. People in Colorado will see a yellow light that is clearly, obviously yellow for like 5 seconds, and 5 cars will all drive through that yellow light. As soon as the light turns red, you think red means stop, don't drive anymore. These Colorado people do not care. They will zoom through a red light. There will be like 5 more cars that zoom through a red light. Not kidding at all with that one. If you have a headlight or a tail light that is out, that can get you pulled over. Failure to signal again. Failure to stop during reveille or retreat. Everybody knows what songs play at 07 in the morning and 1700 in the evening. Everyone knows the etiquette that you're supposed to abide by. If you're driving in your car, you're supposed to stop your vehicle, stop driving until reveille or retreat is over with. If you're walking, everyone knows to stop. You render your customs and courtesy, salute, hand over your heart if you're in civilians. Everyone knows that. So if you fail to stop during reveille and retreat, you can get pulled over for that. The last thing, but not the least thing, not wearing a seatbelt. And like I said, this list, it can go on all day long for the different reasons that people can be pulled over. There's a ton, a million reasons that people can get pulled over. These are just some of the most common ones that I have seen while I've been out on patrol. The purpose of traffic stops: to correct improper driving behavior, so that way we can maintain the safety of everyone on base, on the installation. The key word in that sentence is safety. We drive around and we patrol and we pull people over who are driving improperly. People who are speeding, aren't signaling, are improperly turning, whatever the case. We pull people over for that because it's unsafe. The number one thing is safety. I'm probably going to say it like 500 times because it's so true. The number one thing is maintaining safety of yourself as a patrolman and of everyone else on base. That's our number one job as defenders, to maintain the safety of everyone on base. If you have kids that are getting out of school and the speed limit drops to 25 in a school zone, and you are just getting off work at 1600 and you're rushing to get home because you have to get dinner started at 1605 or something like that. You are zooming through a school zone, that's going to get you pulled over because that can be so unsafe to a kid. A kid can not be looking where they're walking. They could run out in the middle of the road. They can stop in the middle of the road to tie their shoe. And if you're not looking, that kid can get hit and that kid could ultimately die. And there could be multiple kids that die. So the number one thing that we as security forces, patrolmen, defenders do is maintain the safety. And we do that by correcting improper driving behaviors. We can do that by issuing citations, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on. And like I said, number one thing, number one thing, safety is always first. Safety is the number one key as a security forces member, as a defender, as a patrolman. Safety is first. Safety is not only paramount to everyone that's on the installation, everyone that we have to protect on the installation. Safety is so paramount for us as patrolmen. We're out there, we're riding by ourselves. We don't know what these people have in their vehicles. We don't know the type of days that these people are having. We don't know what these people are going through on their own lives. We don't know. We're there because we need to pull people over if they're doing illegal things that they shouldn't be doing. If we are not being safe, we're not being cautious of our surroundings, our safety can be at risk. Our lives can be at risk. At the end of the day, every officer wants to go home to their families. Every single officer. I don't know one officer out there who's just like, I don't want to go home today. It's okay. I don't know any officer that is like that. I've never once talked to a defender who's been like that. I've never talked to a single officer who's been like that. So safety is the number one thing. If you hear me say the word safety like 800 more times throughout this presentation, hopefully it sticks in the back of your mind at how important safety is, not only for the community and the installation, but for ourselves as patrolmen, as defenders. Some officer safety considerations. Like I said earlier, we're out there on the roads. We are pulling people over for them driving improperly. They did something wrong that they shouldn't have done. We're out there, we're making contact with these people. Like I said, we don't know what is going on in these people's lives. We don't know if they have a gun in the vehicle. We don't know any of that. So safety is the number one thing that we need to focus on. Some safety considerations that we need to keep in mind every time that we're out on patrol. Always tell BDOC your location. BDOC is the controller for all of the security forces on base. They dispatch patrols and other defenders to respond to alarms on base, domestics on base, shoplifting on base, accidents on base, that's what BDOC does, basically. So BDOC needs to know everything about where you are while you're out on the roads. BDOC is not one person who just sits. BDOC is in an office somewhere by themselves, and the only contact with the outside world that they have is cameras and radios. BDOC is pretty much obsolete without their cameras and radios. And the radios they're getting word from everyone, basically. So you call in your traffic stop, you need to make sure that you tell BDOC, this is where I am. Whether that be I am on the main road coming through the West Gate, I am in the parking lot of the commissary, I am behind the library, I am 2 streets over from the flight line, wherever you are. You need to be BDOC's eyes and ears, and you need to let BDOC know where you are. If a situation were to go bad, when you pulled someone over, you go up to this person's vehicle, you ask them, can I have your driver's license, your military ID, proof of insurance registration? And they're like, my what? And they decide to pull out a pistol on you, and they decide to shoot you in the neck. BDOC does not know where you are or what just happened to you, or that they need to send somebody else out if you don't call it in to them. Number one thing to keep in mind is just always calling everything into BDOC. The next thing, request backup if you need it. As I said at the beginning of this, my number one philosophy, ask a question if you have a question. Number one philosophy here, if you need backup, request backup. There is no shame in the game for requesting backup at all. No shame. You shouldn't be embarrassed. You shouldn't feel like people are going to talk about you. None of that. The only way that people are going to talk about you is if you do something wrong that you should not have done because you did not call for a backup officer. Number one thing, remember, always contact BDOC and tell them where you're at. Second thing, request backup if you need backup. Every base that I have heard of that defenders are from, if any type of situation goes on base, every defender and their mother will be there to respond to the scene. If it's a traffic stop and you have a car pulled over in the middle of a road in front of the commissary, everyone and their mom is going to come to the middle of the road in that commissary just to make sure that you're okay. You know what I mean? The officer safety is so paramount. No other defender wants to see another defender get hurt, get messed up, get anything because they're not doing something wrong. So if you see something and you see someone getting pulled over, request backup. Don't be afraid to go roll up and see how they're doing. As we can see here in this picture, this defender is on the side of the vehicle. Here he's kind of in the middle of the window, which is not something that we want to do while we are approaching a vehicle, while we're speaking to someone in a vehicle. What we want to do is stand in either the wheel well in front of the vehicle. So say this is my vehicle right here, this is my window, this is the front of the vehicle, this is the side, like where the doors, the 2 doors connect. So this is the front, this is the window, this is the connection of the doors. So we don't want to walk up directly and stand directly in line with the window. You can get shot up that way easily. You roll up to a person and you ask them, hey, can I have this information? They can boom, shoot you easily, because why? You're in the fatal funnel. You're in the middle of everything. You're an easily open target. You're so open and it's not safe. You should not stand in the middle of the window. Always stand behind the wheel well or in between the doors if you have to approach a vehicle. This defender over here, he's kind of in between, kind of at the actual window. It's not safe. He probably already established a rapport with the lady. He might be getting too comfortable. So just make sure that we're not standing in the middle of the window, stand at the wheel well. Never turn your back on a vehicle. Never, ever, ever. Number one thing I said, safety. Your safety is paramount while you are conducting a traffic stop. You never want to turn your back on a vehicle. Like I said earlier, you don't know what these people have in their vehicles. You could have someone that has a pistol and in the glove box and they're just ready to use it on you because they're irritated that they're being pulled over. You could have someone who is so mad that as soon as you turn your back and walk away from them, they're going to drive off. They don't care. So number one thing, don't turn your back on a vehicle. Do not turn your back on a vehicle. You never want to grab their information and turn your back and walk away from them. Which brings me to my last topic. Never let your guard down. Ever, ever, ever never let your guard down. A lot of the times in this career field, people get comfortable. You do traffic stops for so many years and so many different occasions that traffic stops occur, and you get comfortable. You know what to do already. You know how it's done. You know how to stabilize the situation, and you get comfortable. You could get comfortable with the wrong person one day out of the blue. You could get comfortable, and that could be your life right there. That could be your partner's life. That could be a kid's life who's walking across the road because this person decided to speed off in the middle of you turning your back and letting your guard down. So number one thing, safety. Never ever let your guard down. So much can happen if you let your guard down. Next thing we're going to talk about is some ideal locations for where you want to pull people over at. First thing is a well-lit space, somewhere that has a lot of lighting. If you're pulling someone over during the day, there's obviously a lot of lighting outside. Doesn't really matter where you pull them over at necessarily, just as long as you're following some of the other guidelines. If it's at nighttime, however, you're on patrol at night on a mid-shift, it's dark outside, so you're going to want a well-lit area, somewhere that's big, has maybe like a parking lot that has a bunch of street lights, or a neighborhood that has a bunch of street lights, so the area is well illuminated. Next thing, you want a big open space, large enough for at least 3 vehicles. That would be the person you're pulling over, your vehicle, and then a second patrol vehicle if needed. The third thing, you want to be on a level ground. You never want to be up on a hill. You never want to be around a curve. Those are just such dangerous spots that you don't know how the other people that are driving are going to be. You don't know if they're paying attention. You don't know if the roads are slick. You don't know if they are gonna overturn or overcorrect themselves and they're gonna end up slamming into you. You don't know that. You just want to try to avoid hills and curves and be on level ground. If you are on an area that's kind of slanted and you're standing there like this and you're getting the information from the people, if they come at you and you have to turn around and engage with that person, you could easily fall, and that's not something that is safe. That's not something that we want to do. Pop quiz time. Here, I'm going to show you guys a bunch of different pictures, and I'm going to ask you if it is an ideal location or if it's not an ideal location, and if it is, or if why it is and why it's not an ideal location, if it is or not. First one, this is a picture of a hill, up on a hill. Ideal or not ideal? Not ideal. This is not ideal because, as I said earlier, you don't know who's at the top of that hill. You don't know if that person is paying attention. You don't know if that person's brakes are working right. You don't know if they'll see you in time. So you never want to conduct a traffic stop on a hill. Next one, in an intersection, busy intersection. Ideal, not ideal. Not. An intersection is not ideal to conduct a traffic stop. There's so much going on in an intersection. If it's a four-way, you have people coming from every which direction. You turn your lights on, and then you have 5 people pulling over, and the person you originally want to pull over drives away. So an intersection is not ideal for a traffic stop. Next one, a parking lot at nighttime. Ideal, not ideal. Ideal. As I said earlier, if you're working at nights, if you're working on night, at night, on nights, same thing. If you're working at night, a well-lit area, like a parking lot with lights, is perfectly fine. Last one. This is a curved road. Ideal or not ideal? Not ideal. Conducting a traffic stop on a curb is never a good idea because, as I said earlier, you never know how much control that person has over their vehicle. You don't know if they're going to turn right, if they're going to slam on their brakes. They can hit you easily. So we just never want to conduct a traffic stop on a curve. Vehicle positioning. With vehicle positioning, this is just talking about where you want to